I once had a client, a professional football player, $2 million contract, and he was trying to lease a Maserati and the bank turned him down. What made me good at sales was learning how to be super optimistic. I moved out to California with no plan, with clothes on my back, and that's the greatest blank canvas I could have ever given myself. If I can do it, you can do it. There's no excuse. And prepare to suffer a little bit. What's one question you think would be good for my viewers to get an answer to about my business, myself, or my company, or even how to buy a car?
All right. How do you approach like aged units since we were just talking about
Aged units, yes, we were just talking about it. So aged units, once the car gets past like 90 days, all hope is lost of making a profit. So at that point, I just want to sell the car because I usually make money on the newer cars, the ones that come in and sell within 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 30 days. So that's why it's so important to get them through recon fast, get them up on the internet, on the marketing really fast. But once a car gets past 90 days, I'm just happy to sell it and I want to get rid of it. So what I typically will do is advertise that car at my cost and then hopefully upsell products or warranties, or even if I get a good trade-in out of it, then that's going to help me. All right.
what? Yeah, do the. Oh, she can set it up later for just or like if you want to. But if she wants to give it right now, she can. Either or.
All right, buddy. What's one more question you got?
Okay. Let's see.
It's my co-star. It's on my phone.
um, it, how do you like dealing with like credit unions? Like some people want to go through their own banks.
So when I worked at new car dealerships, it didn't matter. You come in with the pre-approval from a credit union. That's fine. The credit unions treat new car stores differently than they treat independent lots or used car dealerships. That's probably because a lot of used car dealerships in the past messed it up. They never completed the registration. Whereas a new car dealership is more trusted in that sense. So I have to be very careful on what deals I do because that involves a bit of a process. I have to, if I have the car floored on my line of credit, I have to pay off that car, get the title. Then I have to register the car, show the credit union that it's registered in the customer's name and them as the lien holder, and then get my check from them. So I literally have to jump through a bunch of hoops as a used car dealership, where a new car dealership doesn't have to do any of that. The credit unions trust the new car dealerships to do it the right way. However, there are some credit unions that I work with that trust me because of my relationship with them. And also because I do run this dealership more along the lines of a new car store, I get a little bit more credibility from my lenders. But for the most part, it's jumping through a bunch of hoops, tying up money, and then, letting the customer come in with a pre-approval. And in most cases, in some cases, I can make money on financing. Like I get a fee from the bank for doing the financing. Even new car dealerships, if they do financing through a credit union, they get a fee. Usually it's like 1.5% of the amount financed. That's just something, it's like a incentive to make sure that they're not trying to shop the loan around and get a better deal. So for me, I like to work with certain credit unions where other ones it's a bit tougher. And what I try to do is, which is essentially the same way around it, but it's just more legwork for the customer. I try to go through my financing and then I tell the customer to go to their credit union and get it refinanced once they get their, first payment in the mail.
And that's what we did actually today on the Chrysler too.
Okay, cool.
They came in for schools with the schools first. But a lot of times, a selling point for them, for customers, is that if you go with our financing, you can leave today with the car, right? If you go with your credit union, it's a process for us and for them.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah. Schools First is one of the better ones. We actually have a good relationship with. I like Schools First. But yeah, it's a lot less paperwork. It's more almost more guaranteed. The disadvantages of using my financing, there's two of them that strike me immediately. I was and just for my backstory, I was a finance manager at new car dealerships for many years. So I've probably got a collective 12, maybe 15 years even in finance management at the new car dealerships. So at a new car dealership, almost every single time they finance a car, there's some sort of a kickback from the bank. If they mark the interest rate up 1 or 2 points, they get to split that, usually 70-30 or 80-20, meaning whatever amount of money that extra point was going to make them on interest, the dealership gets another bonus. So 70%, it's called a reserve, and all reserves are split. So if they mark it up 2 points, and the max they can go is 2 points. I guess from what I hear back in the day, there was like no limit, or they could do 5 points, whatever. But now it's two. No, actually today it's 2.5 points. And on the longer term loans, like 72 months, I believe it's like capped at 1.5 points. That's what they add to the interest rate. So if you come in and you got an 8% interest rate and they sell it for 9.5, they get a split of that extra 1.5 interest rate money. The credit unions, they'll pay like a flat. So like if you're financing $10,000, they'll give you 1.5% of that amount financed, $150. So there's different ways to play the game. In the new car dealership world, there's probably 25 different ways to make money. So what was always interesting is a customer would come in with we lost Brendan. So what was always interesting is a customer would come in with maybe 5 or 6 like advantages, like, oh, I know what my interest rate is in advance, I know what I can buy the car for at another store, I know what my trade-in's worth, I know what my car payment's going to be, I know what this cost or that cost is. So they'd come in with 5 or 6 different advantages. And then it was always a game to, outwit the customer and outsmart them. One of the very common ones was, if they come in with credit union financing, and this was, years ago, but they'd get like a 2.9 or a 3.9% interest rate. Those are long gone. I don't know if they'll be back for a while, but unless it's incentivized by the manufacturer, we'll get into that another conversation. But meaning the manufacturer is going to give you lower interest rate from their own bank, or they have the bank. And there's a couple ways that manufacturers incentivize. So sometimes they'll do 0%. All they're essentially doing is buying down the interest rate. So if, let's say, interest rate on that car costs roughly the customer $4,000 over the term of 72 months, they're essentially paying maybe 2,500 bucks or 3,000, something like that, to buy that interest rate down to a 0%. So a lot of car dealerships could actually do 0% just by buying down the interest rate, but that money has to come from somewhere. It comes from either the profit of the deal or the trade-in or aftermarket options and accessories and warranties, things like that. There's so many different ways to play the game. So one of the biggest tricks I've seen is, especially some of these credit unions, literally, um, uh, they don't like dealerships. I've had a few local ones here in Ventura County that get very like snooty with the dealerships and tell the customers don't buy anything that they try to sell. They'll examine the contracts, they'll kick everything, and they'll tell customers not to buy the dealership's warranty. They'll tell customers not to do anything but get an option contract. And in some ways, it sounds good and everything, but what it does is it creates this like animosity between the dealership and the credit union. The credit union now is at odds with the dealership. So, as a finance manager, um, and even sales managers, they got really good at out crafting the credit unions. Oh, we'll give you a lower interest rate. And then that way, whatever goes on the contract is none of the credit union's business. Now they can upsell. Instead of the credit union playing like fair or playing ball with the dealership, you know, they kind of hurt themselves. So my theory is, and this is something I learned a long time ago, is you want to make it a win-win-win situation. You don't want to win and they lose. And that's kind of like the concept of what the credit unions were doing with the dealerships. They were talking bad about the dealerships. They don't like certain dealerships as a whole. And, you know, when I'd go into a deal as a finance manager, and sometimes I'd get the credit union rep on the phone, they'd say things like, oh, maybe we shouldn't send our customers to your dealership, or maybe we shouldn't do business with you, things like that. I mean, the attitude just overflowed into the deal, and it made it somewhat stressful. So then now my goal was to, how do I steal this loan from the credit union instead of playing ball with them? One of the main reasons is, as a finance manager, if I sold a warranty or some products, they would try to kick it, undercut me, or tell the customer to go back and get the contract done without the products. They were now dipping into my paycheck. As a customer, I want, if I'm shopping for a car, I want a fair deal, but I don't need to grind the dealership into submission and get them to lose a bunch of money and make it a sour deal where they have an attitude. For example, I just bought a vehicle. It's a 2023 Audi RS6. I bought it for myself. And I got $10,000 discount on the car. I wasn't even going to buy an Audi RS6. I just happened to stumble upon it at a Porsche dealership. I was going to buy a newer Porsche, like a GTS, the new one. But of course, they wanted a $25,000 markup, and I didn't want to pay that. And I was also interested for about the same price to get like a 3-4-year-old 911 Turbo S. However, they didn't have something I liked. The guy was trying to show me a Taycan Turbo S. That's the electric wagon. So it's the Taycan Cross, or what, I forgot what they call it, but it's the wagon Taycan, and it was actually a cool car. It had like 930 something horsepower, an insane 0 to 60, like you literally felt your cheeks go up. But I already have an electric car, and I didn't want a second one. I have the BMW i7 as one of my daily drivers. And I went to go buy this Audi RS6, or I mean, this Porsche, ended up leaving with an Audi RS6. They were asking 110,000. I got it for 102,000. And then when they delivered it, I had my mechanics at my mechanic shop inspect the car. They noticed a few things, little things. Nothing I couldn't live with, but just things that, I feel like for spending that type of money shouldn't have been on the car. Like they painted part of the bumper and they had a tape line and it looked kind of bad. So I took it back and I said, you know what? I don't want the car. I almost was so I took it back and I was saying, hey, this has a few items. It also looked like something from the power steering box was leaking at one point and they fixed it. But there was still gunk on the subframe of the car. So I took it back to the dealership and I was saying, hey, I don't like this. I hope you guys can fix it. And then the salesperson was like, well, let's just cancel the deal. And he had like very low patience. And I was like, am I asking too much? I mean, not really. So I was like, whatever, let's just cancel it then. I was already kind of having buyer's remorse too. I mean, an Audi RS6 is one of my dream cars, but it's a lot of money, So it's tough to like be committed, especially when I went in there looking for a Porsche. So anyway, I left with an extra $2,000 discount. And we made the deal. I signed the paperwork, and it was a great experience. The fact that I was willing to walk away, the salesman comes out and says, oh, let's just cancel the deal. I'm like, fine. Then the used car manager is like, wait, we already sold this vehicle. Nothing's more annoying in this car business than when you sell a vehicle and the customer starts to unwind the day of delivery. If you guys ever want to know a great negotiating trick, feel free to use it, but don't be careful with it, because it can also, if you're getting a great deal, it can also turn sour. But one of the favorite things one of the favorite tricks I could give you guys, and I've seen it work time and time and time again, is you're going to pick up the vehicle. The salesperson's already counting his commission. He's already spending it in his head. The dealership's already counting the sale for the month. And if it's an aged unit, they're happy to sell that. They've already accepted the deal. And then you go in and you say, you know what? I think I'm going to change my mind because I just noticed that it has this problem, this problem, this problem. And in my case, I asked them to just fix it. They were like, well, how much is it going to cost? Why don't we just let you fix it? And I said, it's going to be around $2,000. So they're like, done. I'll give you another $2,000 off the car. And we shook hands, made the deal. I took the car home that day. So that was a good little trick that I used, but I don't recommend doing it when you're already getting an amazing deal. If I was getting the car for like $95,000, I would have been very hesitant to not blow up the deal. The average price of my car, 2023 Audi RS6, is anywhere between 105 to 120 right now on the market. So I knew I was getting it at the lower end of the market, and I was okay with that, especially at 102. So I'm sure I could have shopped around more and found one with better equipment for about the same price, but they're also rare cars. So now I'm looking on the East Coast. Now I got to include shipping. I got to start the finance application all over again and hope that I get approved because it's the first time I've gotten a car loan that size. And it's really tough when you get to that level. So, quick touch point on this. If you're financing a big car, you're trying to get a car for $200,000 or even $150,000, $100,000. Most banks won't approve you unless you have a history of similar loans. And now you're probably like, well, how do I get similar loans if that's, not the case where I can't get a loan like that? Well, you start off small, right? Anybody could probably, with good income and good credit, get approved for a $50,000 car. Anybody. You got a 700 plus score, you make a good enough income where the debt to income is below 10%, you're almost guaranteed approved. Meaning if your payment's $1,000 and you're making $10,000 a month, you're below 10%. But when you go for an $80,000 loan or a $100,000 loan, and this is your first time buying that car, they're probably going to say no. And a lot of banks, depending on your credit portfolio, are going to still turn you down on a $50,000 car loan unless you're putting down enough money. That's called loan to value. If the car is worth $50,000, some banks might go 120% of that value, which is 60. But if it's your first time financing a car like that and you have a thin credit profile, they are going to ask you for a 90% loan to value. And they want you to put down enough money to get it to $40,000. And that depends on what you negotiate on the car. Sometimes you can negotiate $5,000 off of a car like that, even more with rebates and incentives. And now you're getting a discount, which kind of like evens out for the taxes. So if you get $5,000 off, but you pay $5,000 for taxes, you're back at $50,000, and then you put $10,000 down. Now you're at $40,000. You get a $600 payment. Now you only need to make $6,000 a month. And sometimes they'll do 15, 20% debt to income. But it all depends on your credit portfolio and your ability to pay. So start off with a smaller loan and move your way up to a bigger loan. I once had a client who just got signed as a professional football player, and he had a $2 million contract. His $2 million contract was in writing. He was on the news. I mean, he just got drafted, signed to an NFL team. He had a 750 credit score, but almost no big credit. And he was trying to lease a Maserati, and the bank turned him down. And it was tough because it's like, why would you, not accept this deal? The guy has the ability to pay, the willingness to pay, and he's got good credit. He wants the car. Blows my mind on some of the decisions sometimes the banks make. Now if the customer wanted like a BMW Financial would have approved him. But Maserati at the time was financed through Chase Bank, and Chase Bank was a bit more conservative. Whereas if it was a BMW, a new car lease, easy, no questions asked. The guy's going to get approved. BMW and Toyota Financial, those are some of the easiest banks to go get a car loan through, especially when you're starting out or you're a first-time buyer. Other banks, other manufacturers can turn you down, but they'll say yes. Nissan is probably the easiest for people with bad credit, but they're going to overprice everything on you. I once worked at a Nissan dealership, And their method of operation was to roll every vehicle. Rolling a vehicle in a dealership term means to let it leave the lot with the customer, regardless of if they had a clean approval or not. 50% of the deals that I did in finance, and this is one of the worst places I worked at just because of the structure. I would work so hard on making the deal, good and doing my job to sell the customer. 50% of the deals, roughly, came back and they were unwinds, which means we had to take the car back, or they were canceled. And we had to call the customer back and say, sorry, we can't get you financed. But that was the mentality of this Nissan store. Overall, in general, Nissan, especially back then, they were very strong lender. But, nowadays, I don't think they're doing too well for multiple reasons. One of it's the CVT transmission. They totally airballed that one. They dropped the ball. Why keep making a weak transmission in every single car? So even then, that segues into what I do now. I know the history. I know most cars' dirty secrets. Like, I will not buy a Nissan Sentra to sell unless it's like still under manufacturer warranty, low miles, and I got it in on trade-in because they needed to trade it in. But 90% of the time, I'm not going to buy a Nissan Sentra, or I get it really cheap and then I can, make some money on it wholesale or sell it with a warranty and still come out ahead. I don't look for Nissan Sentras because 99% of them, the transmission are going to fail, almost guaranteed. Every time I've seen a Nissan Sentra at the auction or other dealerships that I know bought one, bad transmissions, almost every single time. So these are things I know about it. The mid 2000 model, 05 to whatever, 14, Honda V6s, same thing, bad transmissions. And I had one. I had an 04 Honda Accord. And I remember there was a recall out. I talked to the service manager. And the transmission, the teeth on the gears got hot. So that was bad. The transmission always failed. And their recall was to put a transmission cooler on the car. That still didn't do much. So I avoid older V6 Hondas. There's a lot of the Kias and the Hyundais I avoid because of the engines. There's a lot of Ford F-250s I avoid because of the engines. There's a lot of certain types of cars that I kind of stay away from, especially when it's older and high miles, because I know it's going to be unreliable. And no matter what, I'll sell a car and I'll tell the customer, listen, this car is as is. You're buying the car as is. If you want a warranty, we offer them here, but for the most part, it's your responsibility once it leaves the lot. And even to this day, I got an amazing Google review from a customer, and then 4 months later, the transmission goes out. So she changes it from a 5-star to a 1-star, like I'm the one who built the car and I built it wrong. And I think it was like a $5,000 car. Now, had they contacted me, 4 months is a bit long, but if it's within a week, I'll fix the car for free. A few months later, I'm going to go half with them on the car. A year later, I'll give them 30% off. But had they contacted me, I could have fixed the transmission for $1,500. I'm sure that they went somewhere and they got like a $4,000 quote and they only paid $5,000 for the car. So of course they're mad at me like I'm the villain in this story, or like I did something wrong. Like I went down there and super glued the gears together so it ran for exactly 4 months. Anyway, that's what I get. That's part of the pressure. It's almost unfair. Whenever I see a bad review, it drives me nuts. But there's nothing I can do about it. I can try to outpace it with good reviews, but the problem is 95% of the people that have a good experience aren't going to leave you a good review. It's the ones who have a bad experience, or there's something wrong, or they didn't get their way in negotiatings, or you didn't want to do business with them because they came in entitled with an attitude and asking for a huge discount on the car. Those people leave me bad reviews. So right now I have like a 4.7 rating on the Google, but it used to always be like a 4.9. Part of growing pains. You can't please everyone, and it is what it is. Immediately when people come into my dealership, or I hear them on the phone and they start talking about the bad reviews, I don't want to do business with those people immediately. And I have the right to refuse business. So I tell them, no thanks, we don't want to do business with you. Here's why. Because you're already in a negative mindset. You're looking for something to go wrong. You're looking for something to go wrong with the transaction or the experience or the car. And I know instantly if something like that happens, you're going to be on Google or whatever keyboard warrior leaving me a bad review. And it sucks, but it is what it is. At the end of the day, I do the right thing. And like I said in my previous podcast, I've spent over $100,000 repairing cars after they left my dealership, after I sold them. No other dealership out there that I know will do that. I worked at a big Toyota store that was making about $2 million a month profit under a corporation that's worth over $1 billion. And if a customer had an issue with a used car, even a couple days later, they make me the bad guy and go out there and tell the customer it's as is. And I got so used to telling customers, hey, you bought this car, it's as is. All these little problems, nothing we can do. They didn't even offer them a discount in service. Me, I offer customers a lifetime discount on service, maintenance, and repairs if they come to me. So if you buy a car from my dealership, you're always going to get almost half price. It's the cost of the part plus half of the labor. So, for example, a friend of mine called me yesterday. His car broke down in Vegas. And he says, Marcus, my car broke down. What would you have charged me, or what would you charge for an alternator? I said, for you, $200-$300, because I take care of my friends. He goes, okay, yeah, that's great. That's why I love you. But what would you normally charge for an alternator? I said, you know what? I just did one on a Range Rover for a stranger for $600. He goes, okay, because they charged me $1,000. And even in my last podcast, I was talking about that. People will definitely take advantage if they think you got money, you're driving a nice car. He's driving a BMW M3. Of course, they're going to, oh yeah, this guy has money, $1,000. It literally cost me $150 and maybe an hour of labor, which my net overhead on labor is $80. So it doesn't cost me a lot to do an alternator. However, the service industry makes most of the profit at almost all new car dealerships. Because no one can go home and fix the car themselves nowadays. You don't have the $20,000 or $100,000 worth of software and tools that these dealerships or repair shops have. You don't have the experience, you don't have the knowledge, you don't have the know-how. That's one of the most profitable parts of the dealership. Most of the times you're going to make more money on service at a dealership than you're going to make on sales, or about 50-50. So the dealership I used to work at, they made like almost $1 million on service and $1 million on retail every month. So give or take a few $100,000, but the service was almost always consistent. Sales could go up or down 20%. Fixed ops versus variable ops. So the reason I'm explaining all this to you isn't so you can go and use this as a negotiating tool, but a little bit of leverage. If you can get that same alternator down to like $600, you know that they're still making a nice profit. Great. If the shop is extremely busy and they got a lot of high ticket clients, they might turn it down because now they're kind of like cherry picking. The other thing too, when you're negotiating, even buying a car or a discount on service, you have to be respectful, professional, and nice. If you come to my dealership and you're entitled and you got an attitude and it's written all over your face and your body language that you hate dealerships and you hate me for owning one or working in one, I don't want to do business with you. I don't need the money that bad. I'm going to tell you, please leave. We don't want you. So those are some of my my habits. I'm pretty picky on who I do business with. And it's been said in the dealership world that, back when CSI was a thing, the manufacturers like Toyota, Chevy, they would mail a customer satisfaction index. One of the questions is, did the dealership ask you to give 10s, 1 to 10s? Did the dealership ask you to give high scores? You couldn't coach the customer. And you got penalized if a certain percentage, if you drop below a certain percent. So I think it was either 60 or 80% or something of your customers had to fill out that survey. So you had to call the customer, you had to ask them to fill out the survey, and you had to step on shelves to make sure that, they weren't giving you bad marks. And one of the workarounds was, if there's any reason it's less than perfect, please call me and I'll make it perfect. So that was one of the wordings that we would use to get good marks on our survey. And then you had to have a certain level, like you had to be above 90%. So the whole thing started, I don't know if the dealerships still do that, the new car stores. It's been a long time since I've been in sales. But the whole thing just started to become like manipulated. So it didn't really help. Now everyone runs to the internet to bitch about a bad experience. And it sucks because most people look up reviews. And I always tell people, for every one review you see that's bad, there's probably another 100 that are good that people just aren't going to fill out. Because it's the psychology, right? And I learned this a long time ago in sales. If a customer has a good experience, they're going to tell maybe one person, maybe two. Hey, I like this place. It's a good place. If they have a bad experience, they're going to go tell 100 people. They're going to tell 100 people not to do business with your store. It's the 1 in 100 or maybe 1 in 10 in some industries. One customer has a good experience, they don't really, it's kind of like their best kept secret, right? And if a customer has a bad experience, they're telling everybody, they're complaining. People love to complain. I mean, let's face it, we live in that type of society. People love to complain and they want to be heard. Misery loves company. The average human being has 66,000 thoughts a day. 2/3 of those thoughts are negative thoughts. Which segues me into this fun fact. What made me good at sales was learning how to be super optimistic I know that most objections or reasons for someone not to buy a car is because of a negative context wrapped around a fear or insecurity on why they should buy the car. If I could dig that out of them, I could almost become their psychologist and walk them through why it's actually a good idea they buy the car and they don't have anything to worry about. I got good at psychology of sales. Most of my peers around me, the average dealership I went into, I'd sell 20 to 25 cars. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it's a lot of work. And yeah, there's some guys that'll sell 30, 40 cars, but they get help from everybody and they have access to tools I didn't have. And they've been there forever. But if I walked into a new store, and by the way, I've worked at maybe 20 plus new car dealerships throughout my career. If I walked into a new store, I would instantly double or triple their average guy's numbers. I was that good. And what made me good is my work ethic. I wanted to work harder, longer, and I was more focused. So in other words, where most salespeople like to stand around and talk and shoot, share stories all day, I was busy looking for that next customer. I was in the service drive, pulling customers out, or I was calling old leads on the phone. And back in the day before the internet, I was in the classified ads in the newspaper, calling people that were selling their car in the newspaper and telling them that I was interested in buying their car, bring it in, I'll do an appraisal on it. I'd get them to show up at my dealership. They knew it was a dealership. And they were like, oh, well, this is interesting. The guy wants to buy a car. And one day I probably had 5 customers show up before lunch. And it was a slow day. There's probably another 12 salespeople that haven't even had one customer for the day. And my buddies or the good guys that I liked, I'd let them share a deal with me. And I was always on fire. My best day, I think I sold 5 or 6 cars. This was back in the day when it was very uncommon. And I would, I'd always outshine or outperform every salesperson. But nobody outworked me. Nobody. I was the hardest worker. I had the most energy and I did things cleanly. Customers loved me. Customers loved me as a salesperson because I treated them like family. And I always wanted to give the customer a good world-class experience. Nowadays, I don't get to speak to customers as much as I'd like to. And it's very seldom that I get out there and mix and mingle with the customer, but I still have all of those sales skills baked into me. Owning 2 car dealerships, 2 service centers, an auto brokerage, and consulting on a couple other businesses, my days are slammed. I probably get on average about 100 incoming emails, phone calls, text messages a day. Most of the time I don't answer. I send them a please text me reply. So it's hard to even get me on the phone. I'm usually busy. Speaking of, I'm usually busy on the phone and I miss 2 or 3 calls. So that's a great sound effect, right? For this segment. I'm usually busy on the phone and I'm missing 2 or 3 calls. And then by the time I get back to calling those people back, I miss another 2 or 3. So I'll be on the phone all day and I can never get work done. So most of the time I don't answer my phone. And if you know, you call me, I'm like, please text. It's too much work. Now I've graduated to having 2 phones, one just to communicate with my close people, the bat line, so no one knows my number on that one. And then the other one is for business now. So my personal number is now my business line. And now I got a new number. But yeah, and sometimes I put my phone on do not disturb for a few hours so I can focus on my work. But yeah, I deal with a tremendous amount of work. I have a huge workload every day. I have about 30 people that work for me. And it's a lot of work to answer for those people to come and present me with problems or present me with other things. So I am definitely overwhelmed for the time being. And I'm trying to set it up to where it's more automated to where I can do a little bit less work and enjoy life. But yeah, it's not easy. I just started closing on Sundays because I work like 70 days straight, and they were like 10-hour, 12-hour, 14-hour days. I also am a option trader, so I trade options on the stock market. So now I'm waking up at 5:30 every morning, and my day usually ends at like 9:10 p.m. at night. So I really have very little free time. Um, but yeah, I stay super busy, super productive. I don't think I've really ever met anyone that can outwork me. I have this like crazy, insatiable drive to become successful. I'm sure there's people out there, and I'm sure I know people that can, but it's not something you can start doing tomorrow. I mean, you got to kind of build up to it. It takes burning yourself out over and over and over and over again, and it's like working out a muscle. So if you guys ever, or when you ever want to become like that type of success, and maybe there's shortcuts that I don't know about, or that different paths I'm not on that'll get you there. But for me, it's just hard work. I literally worked to get to where I'm at with no handouts, no assistance. I didn't start getting help from people until I became successful. When you're successful, everyone wants to be your friend. Everyone wants to ride your shirt tail. Everyone wants to hang on your success and let you drive them. I hustled hard to get to where I'm at today. I didn't have parents. I was emancipated at 15 years old, homeless 17, 18, 19, as mentioned in my last podcast. I ended up selling and working my way up to this level I'm at now. Now, granted, the first like 5, 10 years when I became a good salesperson, all I wanted to do was be comfortable. All I wanted to do was just make enough money to live a comfortable life. And then it's not until I got bored with that and then leveling up to where I decided I wanted to become the powerhouse I am now. So I'll give you guys some quick tips on some of the things that made me successful. First of all, I moved to California from Milwaukee, Wisconsin in 2009. Milwaukee, I spent ages 16 to 29 years old, couple years out of the city, Chicago and Kansas City. And before that, I moved around all over the place. Dayton, Ohio, 9 years. So my most memorable places were Milwaukee and Dayton. I spent the most time in before I moved to California. But Milwaukee, remember, I was homeless. I had a lot of bad influences. My role models were drug dealers, gangsters, thugs, etc. And I lived in the hood. You know, you had to gangbang, you had to fight, you had to be a bad boy, or the wolves will eat you. I once got robbed by my best friend. My best friend, who I thought was my best friend because he said he was. And the mentality is just use people, pretend, make them feel like, you know, you got their back and they're your homie, but you know, use them until you can't get anything out of them anymore and then kick them to the side. So I remember, you know, I got evicted from my first apartment for loitering. I wasn't loitering. I was waiting on a pizza to be delivered. And they were pretty brutal. I mean, I lived in the hood in Milwaukee. Everyone's loitering. And I was the only white boy in the hood. They nicknamed me WB. So I got evicted because the property manager saw me sitting outside after they warned me not to loiter outside, because that's all we used to do. Sit on the steps of the porch leading into this big apartment building. And anyway, I was out there waiting on a pizza and she's like, I told you, and then they evicted me. And of course, they played games with my security deposit. They gave me back half of my security deposit. And this time in my life, $250 was a lot of money to me, but they gave me the 250. So now I ended up homeless. And I was sleeping on a friend's floor. They didn't even have much furniture. They were sleeping in what looked like an abandoned house that, you know, someone let them have the keys to. Long story short, I was in an institution with this girl I knew, and her boyfriend, her brother, and her mom stayed in this place. No furniture, but she's like, yeah, you can sleep at my place. I slept on the floor, carpeted floor. So at least there was that. And the pillow was cushioned from a couch, I think. So anyway, I slept on this floor in an empty house. And I had a couple bags of clothes. I was like about 17, 18 at the time. And I wanted to make some money. So I got the $250, and my business brain said, you know, with all the resources and knowledge I was exposed to, said, oh, let me go do a double up. So I wanted to go buy an ounce of weed, which was illegal at the time, and flip it, and then start making money from it. So at the time, I saw my best friend Twan, who I thought was my best friend, and the day before I got the check for the security deposit back, I go up to him, and you know, I'm feeling like I needed, you know, some sort of resources or something to get by. So at the time, you know, we would buy like these $5 sacks of marijuana to get high, to kind of like, you know, get rid of to void out, so we didn't have to like live in the reality. And so I saw Twan, and he's shooting dice, and he's got probably $500 in his hand. And I'm like, hey man, let me hold $5. You know, like at the time I spoke more like more more like the environment I lived in. But I had to actually, that's another story, quick fun fact, I had to learn how to speak the way I speak now, to communicate with people. So anyway, I asked him to let me hold $5. Hold means like borrow it, but you never really pay that back back in those days. So I asked him for $5, and he's being very tight. He's like, no, I'm trying to buy a car. I'm trying to hustle up enough money. He ended up losing it all. So anyway, he didn't let me have the $5. And then the next day, I saw Twan, and I'm like, I see him in the passing by, and I'm wearing one of his shirts because I didn't have much clothes, and the clothes I did have, he'd always like somehow confiscate from me. We were the same size, both skinny and about the same height. So anyway, I'm wearing one of his shirts, even though he literally stole all of my clothes that were nice. And he sees my shirt and he knows I have some money, like the $250 security deposit. So he's like, oh, let me borrow $50. I'm like, nah, bro, I'm gonna go flip this. I'm gonna go double up, flip some weed. And in my business mind, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna turn the 250 to 500, 500 to 1,000, and so on and so on, and just make a living that way. Um, but it seems like every time I started to go down that road, I'd always end up getting robbed or played out of the money because I wasn't like that established or big enough yet or strong enough or presence known to where, people respected me. So anyway, Twan, I tell him, nah, man, I'm gonna go flip it. Then he starts to, get mad at me and boom, 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 take off my shirt then, and then he rips the shirt that I'm wearing. And I punch him and I daze him. And I'm like, like giving him a warning punch, like, man, back up off me, and he gets dazed, so he walks away. Oh, you better not come back on the block. We're going to rob you. We're going to rob you. So I go to the house I'm staying. It was on 26th and Wells in Milwaukee. I go to the house I'm staying and where I'm kind of like homeless at. And the neighbor, his name was Face. He just got out of prison. But me and him was cool. We used to smoke weed together, whatever. And he comes over and he tells me, he's like, man, they're coming to rob you right now. So I'm like, oh, really? So I got the $250 and I'm like, man, that's a lot, especially for me and especially in the hood. $20 is enough to get robbed over back in these days. This was like 1998, 99, 97 maybe. And anyway, I go hide the $250. I peel up some peeling linoleum in the bathroom and slid it under there. So I got nothing on me. And then Twan shows up with the gooniest goon in the hood. His name was Black, and his real name was, I think, Lance. I'm not snitching because this is like 30 years ago, and most of these guys probably aren't even around anymore, unfortunately. But he shows up with him and one of his other goons, and this was the scariest dude in the hood. He used to rob dice games, rob everybody. So he brings this big heavy hitter who I thought we was cool, and I thought we were, repping the same gang, So I'm like, damn, this guy was just giving me the secret handshake the other day, and saying what's up, and we were cool. So he comes, and at the time I carried a knife for protection, and Nicole's boyfriend hid my knife because he was kind of in on it. He actually stole it, so I never saw it again. And Face came and gave me a heads up. So these three dudes show up, and they go to like rob me, and no weapons, but. Not that I saw, but they start trying to like, go in my pockets and I'm trying to fight them, but they get the better of me and then they're just like beating me as Twan's not doing nothing because he was a coward. But they go to start like beating me and then trying to like strip me, take my clothes off and everything. And they can't find the money. So Twan eventually feels bad. He's like, oh, no, he was around this one dude we know, like the number one drug dealer. I'm not going to say his name, but he was around this dude that we knew and blah, blah, blah. So he knows how to hide money and this and that. And come on, y'all. And so he leads them away. So anyway, now I'm like, man, this is messed up. So I leave the downtown area. I go all the way to the north side for a couple of days to let everything die off. And I'm staying at Twan's sister's house on the concrete basement floor for a couple of days. His whole family was like my family, and they were all pissed at him. They were like, oh yeah, this is horrible. Like, we're sorry he did that to you, whatever. So anyway, I go back and 3 days later and I'm on the bus. And I used to have premonitions. Like I used to see things coming or hear them, like voices. So I'm like falling asleep on the bus. And as I'm falling asleep, dozing off, something says in a loud, in a clear voice, and there's no one around me. It says, "Wake up, get ready for your fight tonight." And I look, I'm like, who said that? There's no one around me. I was like, you know, paranoid or hearing voices. I was like, man, that's crazy. And I had a bit of narcolepsy back then, so I dozed off quickly again. And I actually missed the bus stop by a block. So whatever, I'm falling asleep again. And the same voice is the same thing, louder. "Wake up, get ready for your fight tonight." And it almost sounds like my voice now. So maybe it's me in the future. I don't know. Going back in time. So I was like, what? I was like, man. So I'm going back to the neighborhood where I lay low for 3 days. And, it was a scary time, but not for me at that time, if it made sense. Cause I was somewhat suicidal. Like I didn't want to live and I was like ready to go, so I was like, whatever, if it happens, it happens. Like life sucked at that point in my time. And as a byproduct, I had zero fear. Like I was like ready to walk into, a death trap. So I go back to the place, and the girl that I was staying with, that I was in the institution with, who remembered me, she was actually gone that day I got robbed, because she was like my advocate, like kind of like my friend, although she was like somewhat using me too, a little bit for whatever. But she was also kind of a little protective over me. And I go back there, and guess who's there? That dude, the scary dude, black, who robbed me. And he's with one of his goons, and I'm actually walking with someone I knew from the alternative school that I went to while I was in the group homes. And this dude was kind of like muscular, and kind of respected a little bit. So I was like, all right, I got backup with me, So we all get there and we all powwow. So it's me, my buddy, Nicole, her boyfriend, her brother Sam, fucking Black, and his goon. He had a new goon with him. So everyone was always following this dude around, trying to like come up on licks with him. And anyway, we start walking, and we're like, hey, let's match a blunt, let's go get some blunts at the gas station, break them down, boom, boom, boom. And as we're walking to the gas station in that group, Nicole starts hyping everything up. And she starts getting all loud, like, how would you feel if someone came to your house and, boom, 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 and tried to rob you and this and that? And I was like, man, I was trying to avoid it, just kind of like awkward. I didn't want to like really get into it because, at the same time, I was like brave, but I was also like reluctant, because I knew how quickly these things turned into, whatever. And I still had some hope in me. That was the key. I never lost all hope. I still had some hope in me of becoming better. I guess becoming the person I am today. So anyway, we're walking to the gas station. She's hyping it up and everything. And then, we were both in the same gang, rep the same gang. And one of the codes of conduct in that gang was if you had beef with another member, you would fight for 6 minutes, squash your beef. So as we're walking to the gas station, I was like, I saw where this was going. And Black starts like, I feel like fighting tonight. And he starts airboxing. And the dude's like pretty built, he's in and out of prison, So I'm like, all right, fuck, I know where this is going, And I was kind of strong, but not like as like muscular, but, I was still kind of big for being skinny. So I was like, man, you owe me 6 minutes. So I brought it to him. I didn't wait for it to go to where I got ambushed and gave him the power. I brought it to him. I said, you owe me 6 minutes. And he goes, all right, respect that. Like, he's like, cool. And then as we're walking back, we're like, we're going to go in the basement, smoke our blunts and bang this out. And then my boy Red, my backup, my homie, he's like, bro, I can't go with you. And they didn't use the word bro. That's a California thing. But back in the, where we're going. So anyway, he's like, I can't go with you, man. He's like, I was like, why not? He's like, I just saw one of my other homies get murdered in the basement a week ago. He got beat to death. So I was like, fuck. So he leaves and I'm going into a basement with people that most of them none of them probably really like me. None of them care about me. I'm the only white boy. I'm sport. Because growing up in the hood, they accepted me as like one of them, but I heard the other side of it. White boys were sport. Go knock them out. Go beat them up. Let's go jump them, Anytime another white boy was walking by, let's rob him. Let's play him. Anytime a white boy, I'd be shooting dice with people and a white boy be coming to buy a double up. And there's always someone like, okay, I'm going to start beating his ass and then boom, boom, boom and take his money, So there was always like plots. So we were sport. We were whatever to prove themselves, But I was a little bit tougher, and the more I got into fights, the more respect I gained, and eventually people just stopped trying me. So anyway, I'm like, yo, I need my 6 minutes. Boom, we go to the basement. Red leaves. We're rolling up the blunts. We're like, all right, we're gonna bet a couple sacks of weed on this. Whoever wins takes all. And then I hear his goon say, yo, if white boy starts winning, I'm just going to come up and pop him in the head. And he's showing Nicole's boyfriend his gun. So I was like, fuck, so I can't even win. It's like, damn. And it's not that I wasn't like confident I was going to win, but I was still young enough and naive enough to where, like, in my mind, no one could whoop me, if I let that beast out. I had this like little beast in me, this little demon, that came out and my voice got real deep. My eyes got real like, crunchy and I just became like a monster and I hit harder and I became an ultimate fighting machine and it just came from nowhere. So I was like, I got to keep that kind of down. I can't like let him out, So I held him back a little bit, but then we start like laying out the rules, all right, 6 minutes. Dude, he's already shirtless, so he gets down on the ground, starts doing push-ups. I take off my shirt, I get down doing push-ups, and when I look up, I see a little first hint of doubt in his eye. And he's like, oh man, this dude's kind of bigger than I thought he was. And he sees how easy I'm doing the push-ups because I worked out a little bit. I played basketball, whatever. Institutions. There's not much else to do, So anyway, then we go at it. And I was always like back cautious. So, I never came in and exposed myself. Dude walks up to me all fast, ready to strike me. And he's threatening all this like big bullshit talk. Like, I'm going to knock his teeth out. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I'm like, all right. So teeth, all right, let me do this so he can't hit me in my teeth. And I heard something somewhere, if you duck enough, and they hit you in the crown of your head, it's not going to hit your face and they're going to hurt their hands. So that was my goal. Every time he came in for a hit, I tried to duck a little bit and then he'd hit the crown of my head and hurt his hand. So, he came in, couple hard hits bouncing off the top of my head. I had a couple knots, but nothing, like no damage on my face. And one of the times he came in and I jabbed him with my left hand and I jabbed quick, so when he came in and I jabbed him and he bounced back, he's like, holy shit. Like he didn't see the jab coming at all. It's something when you're like coming in and you're moving and you're off balance a little bit and you get jabbed, That jab feels like you just got hit with a ton of bricks, you know, because it's much harder. You're walking into it, you're off balance, and you're like, whoa, what just happened? So that was usually my play, is like I wait for them to come in and I jab them a couple times and then try to like knock them out. So I held back. Like I didn't go for like a knockout blow or none of that. You know, I just kept him back by jabbing him a couple times, busted his lip, you know, no marks on my face, knots on my head. And instead of 6 minutes, we did something like 10, 15 minutes, something like that. It just seemed to go on forever. And Nicole's boyfriend was like, I'm gonna keep time in my head. Like, I don't need a clock, you know? So they just let it go on until I was like, all right, man, you win, you know? And then dude, his goon still was like, oh, I want to fight him next, you know? But he's like, nah, chill. Like at that point, he got respect for me. So we smoke it up, chop it up. We're cool. That night, I go upstairs to sleep on the living room floor. There's no furniture, you know, remember? So I go there to sleep. I grab a pillow off the couch to lay my head on. This motherfucker decides to spend the night, uninvited, of course. So he sleeps next to me, like not right next to me, but like, you know, within my vicinity. And I'm like, this motherfucker's sleeping here too? Like, what the fuck is going on? His crib's right down the street. And that night, neither one of us closed both our eyes. We both kept an eye on each other. And he was watching me, I was watching him. Then the next day, we became so cool. We were like, he was like, man, let's go hit some licks together. Let's go do this and that. And I wasn't really about robbing people, especially because they target like the weakest of the weak, you know? And I was like, man, that's a single mother, or that's like some whatever, some goofy, you know, like with nothing, like, you know, and I was like, this isn't cool. So I try to like be as political as I can and like talk them out of those robberies. It wasn't until later in life where I got into doing robberies, when we were robbing like drug dealers and like gangsters, you know. That's when I was about it, because I was like, all right, let's see who's the, you know, whatever. And that was in Kansas City. That wasn't even in Milwaukee. But anyway, I spent the day with him, and then we really didn't do much, because every time I was like, yo, no, that ain't the move, you know. He's like, let's go rob this person. No, that ain't the move, bro. You know, so we came back empty-handed, but you know, I felt bad, you know, like those were like straight victims, you know. I went after villains. So anyway, that was my life back then. And I don't even know how we got into this like segue, but has nothing to do with the car business. So we might not be able to use much of this. But anyway, that's my life as a child, you know, and it's just one of my stories that stick with me, that gave me, like, even years later, everyone knew me because they knew I stood up to that dude who scared the shit out of everyone, and I boxed him. And then now me and him were homies, you know, like we were close. Every time he'd see me in the hood, he'd walk up, big smile, big old hug, like, yo, what's up, man? That's my boy, you know. And one time I was about to get robbed by like these 5 individuals, and, you know, they had their hoodies on, put their hoodies around, turned face down. And then he's like, nah, y'all chill. That's my boy, you know, and he happened to be one of the ones in the crowd. And it was just like, ever since then, I was like, I always had that, like, that pass, you know, I could come in and out of the hood as I pleased. You know, I grew up in the hood, but then I later started like trying to move out. But, oh yeah, I know where I was going with this. So tips to success, right? That's part of my story, right? That's part of who I am. That's part of what made me who I am. And I really don't care if people judge me or whatever, you know, it's part of my life. It's part of my past. I was a product of my environment. I made do with what I had. I had to become a wolf, you know, because the wolves eat the sheep. And most of the people I know that were like too cool, too easygoing, too scary, they were the biggest targets. Those were the guys that got taken advantage of the most, and unfortunately, a lot of those guys didn't make it, past their 20s. Even some people that were like my next door neighbors or people I'd see like one day and then hear about their, their murder the next day. It sucked. It was a scary environment. No one wanted you to succeed. So in 2009, I finally got enough courage to leave Milwaukee behind me. All of the people who I thought were my friends, which, that gives you an example of some of the type of people I hung around, that said that they loved me. They said they were my friends, but they would take advantage of me, set me up to get robbed, steal from me, that sort of thing. Take me down, breaking my house when I was out and steal my stuff. Those were my friends, so-called friends. And like it or not, like those were the people, whenever I was like lonely or bored, I would still hit up to hang out, even though I knew who they were. And it's not like they were just targeting me. They did that to everybody in the group. Like they knew, like certain people were kleptos, certain people would break in your house, and they knew about that. But they would still they'd get over it. They'd still end up hanging out with them at the barbecue. And they were still like on the same side when it became like time for drama. I grew up in a neighborhood where sometimes you'd have to have like 20, 30 people to fight because the other side had 20, 30 people. And for the most part, it was clean fightings, but some people would have like a little mini screwdriver or something and be stabbing people. Like, it sucked. But there was times where, 20, 30 people were fighting 20, 30 people. And that's in Milwaukee. It's worse in Chicago. But those were like, they were still your people. If someone robbed you, they would still ride for you. Which is weird, because like, why they call it the crabs in the bucket. You ever heard of that? Where one crab's trying to get out of the bucket, but you don't need to put a lid on it because as soon as that crab makes it to the top, another crab is going to grab his leg, pull it down. And that's exactly what it was. As soon as I started to become somewhat successful or somewhat distance myself and try to get like a corporate job or a good sales job, I would get pulled down by the group that I was around. So back to my advice, right? Long way around it, I guess, but whatever. Who I was isn't who I wanted to be. I didn't want to be around those guys. I didn't want to become homeless again. I didn't want to, try to scrounge up $20 to get some gas money and a sack of weed and play video games or watch movies or whatever, the stuff is that we did back then. I wanted to become something different. And I said, in my mind, I saw it first. I visualized what my life could be like. I said, I want to be around successful people. I want to become a successful person. I want to be around doctors, lawyers, CEO, celebrities, maybe even some politicians, like the high society. I wanted to be around those people. So I moved out to California with no plan. The clothes on my back. There's probably like 8 different times in my life where I started over from scratch with nothing. That was one of them. And that's the greatest blank canvas I could have ever given myself. It was tough. I was lonely. I was never close to my family, so I didn't have any family support. I didn't have parents back home sending me money whenever I was in trouble. I quite often thought about moving back to Milwaukee because it was pretty hard to make it out here the first few years. But eventually I caught some traction. I started to become stable and I started to grow. And now I'm surrounded by all of those people. I have friends that are in every category of what I mentioned. And it's, it's my life. I created it. I manifested it. One of the pieces of advice is you got to see what you want in your future. You can't just go with the flow. You can't just you can't just accept being a product of your environment and saying this is who I'm going to be. You can't grow up in an environment and expect the environment to change for you, to give you the tools necessary and the skills and the support necessary. You got to go out and get what you want in life. And if you can't find it, you got to create it. You got to literally create your own life and design it. It's like the Matrix, right? We are all trapped in a matrix. And whether or not we are a worker at a gas station, a cook at a fast food, or a car wash guy, I mean, anybody and everybody has the ability to grow from there and become successful. And in my mind, I was like, you know what, even if McDonald's, I worked at McDonald's for a couple years while I was homeless. It was just never enough money to pay for anything. You take home $600 a month and your rent was like $500. So I was homeless because it's either feed myself or whatever. But I still worked at a full-time job, and I said to myself, well, I'm just going to become a manager and owner of this McDonald's. So that was my ambition at that time. When I worked in the car business as a salesperson, I said, I want to become a manager. I want to become a finance manager. I want to become a general manager, an owner. Now I own several dealerships and auto repair shops. So you have to almost visualize what you want your life to be like. You have to manifest it in a way. You have to see it, create it, live it, and go through the suffering. Nothing great is going to come without suffering. My life, my early age was full of suffering. I was getting beat. I was getting robbed. I went to jail. I got neglected. I got every type of abuse done to me as a child, every single type. And it sucked, I made it through that part of my life, tattered, battered, broken, a shell of myself. And I still made it out, became successful, and became the guy I am today. So if I can do it, you can do it. There's no excuse. Never stop trying, and prepare to suffer a little bit. Prepare to give up who you are to become who you want to be. One of the secrets is surround yourself by people you want to be like. In other words, when I was surrounded by the criminals, the gangsters, the whatever, I was like, okay, this is my path. This is what I'm born into. This is what I can do. I can become a drug dealer. I can become a pimp. I can become a robber. I wasn't going to become a fucking bum. I wasn't going to sit around, I didn't have a mama to live with, but most of my friends did. They'd live at their mama's house until 30 years old and not have nothing, and then get a job in their 30s and, to start to take care of themselves. Or they live off of some girl that they, knocked up. That women were always kind of like successful. Like they'd always have a job and a house and a car. Most of the guys always just use those girls. But anyway, I didn't want to become a bum. I didn't want to go to jail. So I was like, okay, this isn't the life for me. I want to create my life. And moving out of my environment, it was a depressing like 4 or 5 years when I moved to California because I didn't have nothing. I didn't have resources. I didn't know where to go. The internet wasn't even that big of a thing back in 2009. it was around, but there's like no like how do you do this or that. I I got turned down for most jobs because I was still rough around the edges. Um, and I was with a girl when I moved to California. I attached myself to this girl who I thought was successful, who ended up being, a user and an abuser. So she would like mentally and verbally abuse me all the time. That was fun, but she was hot. I liked her. The first couple months I met her, I'd say, and then I realized she was toxic, and it was she had multiple personalities. Like she literally wouldn't remember or deny, being doing something like cheating on me or whatever. Like who cares? It was like, damn, this is the person I'm like kind of depending on, and she was like whatever. She was struggling herself. So I went from it was a lot of pressure. In Milwaukee, I only needed to make $2,000 a month to live comfortable. When I moved to California with her, I needed to make $6,000 just to break even. And most of it was all her bills, her lifestyle. She drove the Mercedes Benz, hair, nails done all the time, nice house, high maintenance for me at the time. And I had to get out of that mentality of like, man, finding a job to where I can take home $500 a week to I need to make $1,500 a week just to break even, 3 times as much. So that was tough. And it was a struggle. And sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. And her and I broke up several times, got back together several times because I was kind of attached to her for some reason. I guess you could say I liked the abuse, so I attracted that type of person to me. But I got out of that cycle. It's when I met my best friend, Sam, who helped me discover the potential that I had buried inside of me. He, in many respects, he was one of the guys that somewhat saved my life because, life wasn't that great for me. We were sitting playing chess one day and I was complaining about this girl, how like abusive she was and this and that. And, like I said, people love to complain. So I'm complaining about her and he's like, can I tell you something? I was like, sure. He goes, it's your fault. And I looked up to Sam. I really did. I mean, the guy was super smart. He was in med school at the time, then became a great doctor. And we were the same age. But I looked up to him because, the guy had the life that I wish I had, I wanted to become a doctor or whatever when I was younger. So anyway, he says, can I tell you something? I'm like, sure. He says, it's your fault. Later, he told me that was a really hard thing for him to say because it involved him being brave enough to, not like push me away or, say like whatever, rub me the wrong way. But I accepted it. And I was like, you know what? He's right. Like maybe he is right. It is my fault because I choose to stay with this girl. So not too long after I left, Sam and I always stayed in touch, and he took some life-changing journeys and classes and everything, and he got me involved in it. So I kind of got to do some of the stuff he did. One of my favorite things was it's called Mastery in Transformational Training. And it's compared to like a landmark forum. So Mastery and Transformational Training was one of my favorites. It basically gave me the tools and they did some sort of therapy. You play these games, you experiment with results of what your decisions lead to, and then they lecture you about like, or they teach you about how, you create a win-win-win scenario, or how what you're doing is wrong because that's the way most people think, and it's selfish, or it exposes your blind spots. And after that training and that experience, I now had the ability, the wisdom, the tools I needed to become successful. And that was definitely one of my biggest turning points in life. And my buddy Sam he sponsored the class. At the time I didn't have the $1,000 to go, but he cared enough about me to get me into it, and he paid for it. And I'm forever going to be like grateful, because that helped me change my life. It helped me get rid of my old stories and my old mental blocks, my old ways of thinking. And it helped me create a new, better version of myself. And then it didn't stop there. I mean, I did the Tony Robbins thing. I did a lot of cool stuff. I went to the Peaceful Warrior Retreat in Costa Rica with Dan Millman. He's the author of the book Peaceful Warrior. Tony Robbins was awesome. I got to walk on fire. A lot of similarities to the MITT. MITT was more impactful for me because it was more like hands-on. Tony Robbins, similar, but more like motivational. I did the Tony Robbins thing a couple times. I recently redid it in November, and I sent my managers to it in March, the virtual version. Unlock the power within. That's an amazing way to present it. It was pretty fun. The growth journey, the learning, the unleashing a new version of myself that was always in there, but I just didn't know how to get to. But yeah, surrounding yourself with the people you want to be like. If you want to be a millionaire, hang around 5 millionaires. You're going to become a millionaire. Success leaves clues. How do you find them? I don't know how to I don't know where you're at or where you're coming from. But, you also have to kind of change yourself. So if you're coming from an environment like I grew up in, you got to change a lot of things about yourself. One of the things I had to change about myself was letting go of anger. I used to get angry a lot. And even if I was keeping it to myself, it's the micro expressions or the energy, that people would sense and feel. Integrity, that's really important. If you say you're going to do something, do it. If you say you're going to be there at 10 o'clock, be there at 10 o'clock. Sorry for being late this morning. But, if you give someone your word, keep your word. Or give them a fair warning and heads up on why you're not going to be there. There's a lot of things you got to change to become a better version of you, to start finding those people you want to be like. So first you study the group you want to be like, and what is this group that I'm seeking to attract to me that's going to give me the environment I want to thrive in. If you want to be a billionaire, hang around billionaires. You want to be an actor, hang around actors. You want to be a filmmaker, hang around filmmakers. Anything you want to do. You want to be a car salesman, go work at a car dealership. You're going to learn a lot from everyone, but you got to kind of still, any industry, every group and individuals, you still got to kind of pick and choose who you want to be and what you want to do. For example, I know doctors that don't agree with the system, but they went to school all that time and they're trying to change it from within, because a lot of the healthcare industry solely revolves around profit. There's something called moving the meat. So you come into an ER room and you need to be checked up. They try to keep the doctors limited to 5 minutes with you. Sometimes it takes 20 to 30 minutes, to like get to the core root of the problem. But once the doctor sees you, there's another claim for insurance. Now move on. And that's why there's a lot of waiting, and you spend a lot of time with nurses and not the doctor, and the doctor's in and out, when you come into like an ER or something, because it's all profit driven. Could they help you more? Could they sit down more and listen more? Sure. But, at that point, you got to almost get private health care, and pay a doctor. You become one of those elites that have a doctor on call that can spend hours with them. There's just so many like secrets you unlock as you get to every new level. More money, more problems. Absolutely. But for me, I'm at a point, and because of my life, my past, everything I've been through, I'm able to deal with problems and solve problems faster and quicker and more efficient than a lot of people. I can take on more stress, essentially. Where this level of stress I'm dealing with now would take out 99% of the population on Earth if they had to step into my shoes today and deal with everything I deal with. They wouldn't make it. They wouldn't wake up the next morning because it's too much. But for me, because I've been exposed to so much, yeah, it gives me an advantage. Okay, so there's a few psychology tricks. Mirroring, if they're standing a certain way, or sharing things in common. If you say someone's name a lot, they're more likely to trust you. These are things I've learned in the sales schools. For me, I've evolved a lot. If I'm authentic and I'm genuine and I'm not trying to, like, I don't care if they buy a car or not. I really don't care if the end result of our experience together, it ends up in a sale. I don't care. But I'm going to do my best. I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be transparent, and I'm going to tell them like it is. If this car is known for bad transmissions, I'm going to tell them. Someone reached out to me today. Hey, is this a good car? And this guy's a car guy. He wants to buy a car for his son. He's like, is this BMW, this older BMW, a good car? It's a good car now, but it's going to be full of surprises later because it's a BMW. That's why it's cheap when it was very expensive brand new. But, how about a Honda Civic? Because I got Honda Civics available, and those are more reliable. So I'm always going to tell people the truth and the answers that they seek. If you come on my lot and you say, hey, are these cars known to be reliable? I don't care about making a sale. I'm going to tell you the truth. No, this car is not known for being reliable. They have bad head gaskets, transmissions, whatever. It's in good shape now, and there's buyers for it. And most of those buyers don't care about that. They want to buy it to race it around, whatever. There's still always a market. But I'm the most transparent person. I'll tell you how much money I paid for the car, how much money I spent on the car. I'll tell you if I'm making $2 or $3 grand profit or if I'm losing $2 or $3 grand. I don't care. I'm going to tell you the truth. And I've gotten so good at using the truth as my tool of choice that people love it. They respect it. And time again, I always get the same compliment. Wow, you're so transparent. I love this. Like, everyone trusts me because there's no reason to lie. I have no fears. I'm not afraid of losing a sale. I'm not afraid of not making money. And, at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you my honest opinion or my honest take on things. And if it works, it works. It's great. Same thing in my relationships. I've been so bold with my girl and so forthright that it's almost like sometimes I feel like we're going to break up, but then she thinks about it and she goes from whatever, anger to being like, okay, I respect you. You have told me the truth. Where most men are afraid to. In order to transition, because I feel like most people, especially when they're coming from scarcity or poverty, they're going to lie. They're going to try to play you or get over on you or beat you. Number one, you got to be in the mindset. It's got to be a win-win-win situation. I'm not playing to win and you lose. I'm not playing for us both to lose. I'm not playing for you to win and me lose. I want us both to win-win. I want to win. I want you to win. So you almost have to adapt to that set of thinking, right? That rule of thinking. And the other thing too, for me, I've never felt right or good about lying. I did it when I was younger. I did it as a survival technique, sure. But usually I'd always come clean and confess and tell the person the truth later because I felt bad about it. So I'm not saying I never lied, whatever, but to this day, I don't care if you don't like the truth or not. I don't care if the truth's going to get me in trouble or not. I don't care if the truth's going to lose me money or not. I just don't like lying. I don't like playing games. I'll tell you what I think about you. I'll be real with you. I'll tell you if I like you or I don't like you. I'll tell you if you're full of shit or you're a good guy. I'll tell you if you're doing something that I think is dumb. I'm as real as it gets. I'm not afraid to tell you you're whatever. With the exception of some of these people that are on drugs. I mean, someone came to my dealership a few weeks ago looking for a job as a salesperson, but I could tell they were up all night tweaking out on meth, and I didn't want to tell them, like, man, I could tell you're high. I could tell you're tweaking on meth. Get out of my dealership. I'm never going to hire you. I didn't say that. I just said, hey, we're not hiring right now. So, because you never know what level of crazy they're going to lead to. So yeah, there's exceptions, but in most cases, I've shocked everyone around me multiple times by being truthful and honest and brave enough to be so honest. So what gets you from lying for protection or scarcity, because people do that all the time still. They put on a mask and they want people to see them as a certain individual. You have to detach yourself from the result. Obviously, there's better ways. It takes a lot more work and it's a lot tougher to work with the truth and make the truth spin into something positive when you think that someone's asking you a question because they want to see if it's going to create a negative experience for them. And I think most people lie because they don't want the perception of something negative about themselves or the experience or about what they think about a person. I don't care. I'm going to tell you, but I'm also going to tell you some good things behind it. So for example, if I say, I don't like the fact that, your work quality sucks, but I do see potential in you and I see that, you're trying hard. So that's why I keep you on my team. But yeah, it's tough. Some people are very open to the truth. Some people, they hate it. And that's a risk I'm willing to take. You'll literally burn relationships, but those are relationships that aren't worth having. So you got to be brave enough to be honest. And if the people don't want to mess with you or be in your life afterwards, they're not your people anyway. So I want to surround myself by people that like and value my honesty. And if they don't, they don't. Well, I mean, I think a lot of people are still caught up on the old school concept of negotiating. I mean, I get people in my dealership all the time trying to get $2,000 or $3,000 off. I'm making $1,000. I might be making $2,000 because I take the car, I buy it wholesale. I take the car, I buy it wholesale. There's fees on fees on fees. Everybody wants their pound of flesh. Flooring company fees, transportation fees, auction fees, etc. Then I got to recondition the car and make it nice. A lot of people think that, I can walk onto a dealership lot and negotiate $5,000 off of any car when they've already found the best deal online. They've literally shopped every single car within 500 miles and found mine to be the cheapest car. I got my car online for $10,000. Everyone else has it online for 12 to 15. And they're going to come in my lot and look for reasons to negotiate it. It's like, look, no, I'm not trying to make a lot of money. I try to find cars to where I can sell them at the cheapest price. That takes a lot of work. That means I got to buy them cheaper than what everyone else is buying them for. And that gives me the ability to sell them cheaper. So if you want to come and try to negotiate, that's so old school. You know, back when the internet wasn't a thing, sure. Or if you want to negotiate for practice or fun, go to the dealership that has the highest price car. If mine's 10 and that's the lowest, and this guy's 15 and that's the highest, go there. Practice negotiating with that guy because he's got budget. He's got room. He's got a reason to sell that car for cheaper than what he has it online for, because you got guys like me with the cheaper cars coming up on market right now. So negotiating isn't really a thing anymore, but bargain hunting is. The internet definitely changed the way people buy cars. I mean, now you can go online, you can compare it, and you can click the filter, lowest price car, and you can put the miles, the year, the trim, everything you want. And you don't need to negotiate. Just find the cheapest car, buy that one. However, most dealerships nowadays, they advertise the cheapest car just to get you in the door. That's what I do. My cars most of them are lost leaders. When you come in, I'm going to try to upsell you. I'm going to try to sell you a warranty. I got dealer installed options like most dealerships that play the same game I'm playing. And it's going to be a back and forth. And I'm going to try to sell the car for more than what I have it listed for, sure, by selling you a warranty or a dealer installed option like my low jack system or whatever. And then there's other dealerships that it's like, if you don't put your car as the lowest price online, you're wasting your money. So you gotta everyone's almost forced to do it that way. But the number one dealerships right now, they all do the same trick. And then they got $4,000 to $5,000 to $7,000 worth of add-ons, and it's a game. And you're not negotiating down, you're negotiating up. So gone are the days where you can walk on a dealership that didn't advertise their cars on the internet. This is back then, before the internet was prevalent, and negotiate $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 off of a car. A lot of these old school people come in and they still think it's the same game. They still think every single car I sell, I'm making $4,000 or $5,000. I'm making $4,000 to $5,000 per car. I have to. My base break even is $3,000 a car just to pay the bills. I have to sell 50 cars at $3,000 just to pay my overhead, which is $150,000 out of one of my dealerships. Right now, my total overhead is $400,000 a month between all four companies. So yeah, I need to make a profit. But if I buy a car cheaper than everyone else is paying for it, I shouldn't be penalized and have to sell it cheaper. Profit's not a dirty word. And it also takes a lot of work because I have to work on selling those other products to sell my way out of a potential loser. Today we sold a car, it's losing $2,800. But tomorrow we might sell a car and make $10,000. We're not overcharging for the car. I just bought the car better than everyone else did. I was the only one at the auction raising my hand, buying that car, bidding on that car when no one else did, and I got a killer deal. And that happens sometimes. So yeah, gone are the days of negotiating, and of course you come in on one of those, I might negotiate a little bit, but there's no telling. If the car is on my lot for more than 90 days, it's below my cost. Now I'm trying to upsell to get at my cost or break even or make a little profit. And we've done that, several times, time and time again. So the car business isn't like it used to be, and there's no point in negotiating. Just find the cheapest car online. I sell cars all the time online, sight unseen, and I ship them all over the country. I mean, we take good enough pictures, sure. But for the most part, if they're local or they're close by, I mean, I've got people that drive down here from Sacramento to buy cars. That's a 6-hour drive. From Arizona, another 6-hour drive. But a lot of my cars I'm selling to people out of state. And they're buying them because there's no rust on my cars. I got California cars. So every once in a while, I'll sell a car with a little bit of rust, but whatever, it doesn't hurt anything. But yeah, people are there's a big movement right now where people will buy a car sight unseen. They know the car, it's been inspected. I have good reviews. I sell good cars, so I got a good reputation. A lot of people buy my cars, different states. We ship cars all over the country. California cars are some of the best because there's no rust like you get up north. There's no flooded cars like you get in the hurricane areas. So, a lot of those cars aren't disclosed as flooded or hurricane, and no one's going to show you pictures of the rust. So a lot of people buy them from California. Also, another reason a lot of people will buy my cars and have them shipped to them is because I target unique cars, like one-of-a-kind cars, that you only see once in every, 6 months come online for sale. I love those cars.
What's like an example of one of those cars?
I mean, one of them was a 1999 Buick Riviera supercharged silver Aero. I think they made like 200 of them or something like that. So that was a unique car. Or I recently shipped a Suzuki Sidekick, or was it a Geo Tracker, one of those, to Michigan. I mean, I ship cars all over the country because they are rare. And then it's also coming from California, so you don't have to worry about it being a rust bucket. And it's a well put together car. People can always send an inspector. I mean, you can send Lemon Squad or somebody to go look at the car. You can ask for a third party inspection, a mechanic nearby. You call them and say, hey, I have this car shipped to you? You inspect it. Tell me what your take on it is. You don't need to buy the car without having it inspected. Well, there is this one deal that made me change my policies. My sales manager, we had this car that we needed to sell. And my sales manager decided to take a $15,000 credit card transaction, American Express credit card transaction, on this car, on this deal. And I was like, yeah, whatever, sell the car, make it happen. And the guy, total scumbag, by the way. The buyer, total scumbag. And his name was Guy. I'm not going to say his last name because that might be too far, but his name was actually Guy, and he was a total scumbag. So the guy basically goes around finding reasons to lemon law cars and sells those to attorneys. And that's his main gig in life. And we tried to not sell this guy a car. And he said, well, I want this fixed, this fixed, this fixed. No, it's an exotic car. It's a C63 2010 with a naturally aspirated V8. We knew what we had. It was a $20,000 car. We sold it for $15,000. And he's like, well, I want the power steering leak fixed and this and that. And like, no, we're selling it as is for this price. If we fix it, it's going to be more. So we told the guy several times we don't want to sell him the car. We don't want to do the deal. And then he finally begged us to sell him the car. Stop trying to negotiate him. He then starts writing me these setup letters. I know what he is. He's doing. So he writes me all these setup letters, and he's a complete coward. So he writes me these setup letters. I call him on the phone. He hangs up, blocks my number. Trying to what are you doing, man? Calling him out, right? Typical, what we were just talking about. People don't like to be confronted with the truth because they're a lot of cowards. So anyway, he hangs up, blocks my number, disputes the credit card. Pain in the butt to get the credit card transaction back. Then I blocked the title. I put a lien on the title so he can't go register it. And he realizes that after 3 weeks after he disputed the credit card, he goes and tries to register the car and finds out I blocked the title. So then he calls me, well, I spent all this money on the car, so you need to give me $7,000 to bring it back. And the whole time I'm trying to get the car repossessed. So I'm like, listen, I'm not going to give you any money to bring the car back. Well, if you don't, then I'm keeping the car or whatever. So I was like, I agreed to like $2,000 or something. I don't know. And I did that to like try to get the car back. So anyway, turns out he brings the car back. He didn't do any of the work for it. He did zero of the work on the car. He tried to like use a lemon law style claim to keep the car for free. And it almost hurt my business because that's a lot of money, you know, especially at that time. And I was like, wow, this guy is a complete scumbag trying to steal from me. No more credit cards over $3,000. No more American Express, because American Express is very consumer friendly. So no more American Express and no more north of $3,000 credit card transactions. Now we have them sign receipts. We do this, we do that. Like we even want to run their credit sometimes because I mean it's like, you know, this guy took straight advantage of it, disputed it, tried to keep the car, still tried to register it in his name. And then when he returned the car, I ended up buying it back from him. And still to this day, it's a headache. I got lawsuits I'm setting up to go after this guy because it's annoying. It's distracting. But yeah, he's a complete coward, scumbag. And if you're listening to this, it's not over. So anyway, that's one of the worst experiences I had selling cars. All the things I've learned in my life, and I don't care about money. Like it's not the biggest thing in the world to me. Money's a tool. You got to detach yourself emotionally from it and use it as a scorecard or a tracker or whatever. And it's going to come and go. It's always going to come and go. The better you get at playing the game, the more legit you are, the more money you'll make. But because of the life I experienced, you know, I was emancipated at 16, homeless, 17 to 19, no real support. I've partnered with this local charity, and we give cars away. Like they'll pay for like half the car. Sometimes, you know, they'll pay like $5,000 and it's an $8,000 total. And that's just net cost, right? That's like my straight cost on the car. So I'll pitch in the other $3-4 grand sometimes, most of the time. So it's kind of like a partnership. And we give cars away to these teenagers that age out of the system that went through a lot of the stuff that I do. So this is one of the good things I do, where we give away cars. It's you got to give back, right? There's 4 fundamentals that I learned in Tony Robbins. It's people are looking to be significant. People are looking for love and connection. They're looking for certainty, and they're looking for uncertainty. Those are the 4 like main pillars, I believe. If I'm saying it the right way, that Tony Robbins taught me. And then there's 2 others that leads to fulfillment. So like that's the base that most people want. They want like love and connection. They want certainty, uncertainty. They want to be significant. And then the other 2 is that a lot of people give up on, or they never like follow or seek. The other 2 that people never seek is growth and learning. So like continuously growing, continuously learning, and giving back. So, you know, don't ever stop learning. Don't ever think you know enough. I was at that point in my adolescence where I was like, I don't need to learn anymore. I don't need to continue learning because I know enough to get me through life. And and then there's part of me that became like, I'm just trying to survive and I'm just trying to hoard my resources and keep everything that I have at some point. But then, once you break through to a certain level in life, you got to continuously grow, continuously learn, keep your mind fluid, and learn new things, get mentors, peer groups, watch YouTube videos, whatever, and giving back. That's what I do, so I'm always learning new things, and I like to give back. I like to help people that really deserve my help. And that's also part of why I fix cars after the sale. So those are a couple fun facts about me. I like to give back, and I like to continuously learn and grow and become the best version of myself. So anyway, until next time, thanks for tuning into Inside Car Guys, the podcast. This is episode 2, season 1, I guess. All right. Season 1, episode 2, Inside Car Guys, the podcast. Yep. All right. Very good, man.
Thank you, man.